If you've ever thought your HOA was just a harmless group of neighbors with too much free time, buckle up, because today you're about to hear how one HOA president tried to bulldoze her way through my property and ended up sinking her own empire. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Willow Bend, Texas. I was out, watering my roses, minding my own business, when I noticed a group of people with shovels stomping across my front lawn like they were reenacting the gold rush. Leading the charge was Brenda Lawson, the newly elected self-proclaimed Queen Bee of the Willow Bend HOA. Brenda was the kind of woman who wore a clipboard like a badge of honor. Rumor had it, she wasn't just obsessed with property values. She was quietly cozying up with a local landscaping company, hoping to kickstart a side hustle funneling HOA funds into beautification projects she personally approved. And guess what? My yard apparently was standing in the way of her grand vision. Without so much as a knock on my door, her crew started digging, and that's when the first geyser erupted. One poor guy jammed his shovel straight into a pressurized irrigation line. Water hissed, exploded upward like Old Faithful, and absolutely drenched Brenda's neon pink windbreaker. She shrieked like a startled parrot, clutching her soaked clipboard like it was a wounded comrade. And me, I just stood there, frozen garden hose still dribbling at my feet, watching the carnage unfold. But here's the kicker. They thought they were digging up unauthorized landscaping. What they didn't know was that beneath their boots ran a legally recorded utility easement granted decades before the HOA even existed. And better yet, tucked under the sidewalk, Brenda loved parading around, was a secret backup irrigation line, ready and waiting. See, the real war didn't start with the geyser. It started 3 days earlier when I noticed my west lawn looking thirstier than a cactus at noon. Sprinklers weren't firing. I figured it was a timer glitch, maybe a busted valve. But when I followed the water line, I found trenches, fresh, raw trenches dug right along the border of my property. And there she was, Brenda, arms folded. Sunglasses so big they could detect solar flares, barking orders like a general. When I politely asked what in the world she was doing, she didn't even look at me. You have unapproved underground utilities encroaching on HOA land. She barked, we're removing them. Consider it a courtesy. I tried reasoning. I even unrolled an old survey map from my garage showing the easement. She refused to look. If you have concerns, she sniffed. Feel free to submit them in writing to the board. Translation, go pound sand, peasant. The next morning, my yard looked like a World War I battlefield. Mulch heaps everywhere. Flower beds gutted. My drip system shattered. And most critically, the drainage line that kept my retaining wall from collapsing, severed clean through. One good storm, and half my backyard could have slipped downhill like a bad ski accident. That night, fueled by anger and exactly 3 root beers, I climbed into the attic and pulled down a dusty banker's box. Inside, my secret weapon, a notarized easement from 1997, signed by the original developer, giving me full rights to install and maintain water lines across the so-called buffer zone, and a clause explicitly allowing a backup system under the sidewalk Brenda hadn't just messed up. She had activated my contingency plan without even knowing it. The next morning, I didn't scream. I didn't call a lawyer. I just smiled, walked outside, and handed her a crisp copy of the easement. "You've made a mistake," I said sweetly. She barely glanced at it before thrusting a fine notice into my chest. $2,750 for unauthorized landscaping. Perfect. I tucked it in my back pocket like a trophy and made one call to my buddy Mike, a contractor who owed me a favor after I rescued his laptop from a catastrophic coffee spill last Christmas. By sunset, Mike and I had scanned the yard with a GPR system, confirmed the backup line was intact, and rerouted the entire irrigation system through it without touching a single inch of Brenda's precious sidewalk. The next morning, my sprinklers sang a beautiful, watery symphony across the lawn. Brenda, meanwhile, was losing her mind. She accused me of illegally tapping into HOA water, of sabotage of subterranean terrorism. Her words, not mine. She even dragged along Jerry, the HOA's compliance officer, a retired accountant with the spine of a wet noodle. Together, they stormed up to my door, demanding to inspect my system. I smiled. "Bring a warrant." I said. Jerry almost dropped his clipboard. Brenda wasn't used to hearing no, and things only got worse for her. Turns out, when her rogue crew trenched through my easement without permits, they also destabilized the runoff system beneath the sidewalk. Minor detail, nope. Because within a week, cracks started spidering through the sidewalk. Bricks rain pooled into the gaps. The ground shifted. One morning, a kid tried to scooter across it and nearly launched himself into orbit. Suddenly, the HOA had a real problem, a public safety hazard. At the next HOA meeting, Brenda tried to spin the situation. She claimed the sidewalk was cracking because of unauthorized homeowner activity. She hinted I was responsible for the damage. Bad move, because I calmly stood up, handed copies of the easement to the board, and best of all, played footage from my security cameras showing Brenda's crew trenching through the easement without permits and sneaking back at night to sloppily patch the damage with backyard dirt. The room went silent. One by one, board members turned on Brenda like sharks, sensing blood. Within days, she was suspended from the HOA board. 2 weeks later, a full county investigation was launched into misuse of funds, unpermitted construction, and safety violations. Brenda, she vanished faster than a cookie at a bake sale. No farewell emails, no goodbyes, just gone. Word was she moved 3 towns over, into a community without an HOA. Poetic, don't you think? Meanwhile, my garden thrived. The new sidewalk gleamed. The HOA adopted mandatory training on easement laws for all board members, and me, I quietly celebrated with a cold drink and a garden party for the neighborhood. No fines, no trench warfare, just good vibes and green grass. But the best part, every time someone walks that new sidewalk, they're stepping right over my legally protected easement, now marked by a discreet bronze plaque that reads, "Community Easement, protected by homeowner partnership." A subtle reminder that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't with anger, it's with facts, patience, and a backup plan. Because power built on arrogance crumbles, but power built on solid ground, that's forever. So tell me, have you ever had a run-in with an HOA power trip? Drop your stories down in the comments. I'd love to hear about your battles, your victories, or even your disasters. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ever tangled with a clipboard-wielding Karen. See you in the next one.